Over the course of my ministerial career, one of my greatest privileges and loves has been my work with coming-of-age youth as they grapple, investigate, and find joy in their faith. For those of you who are new to our tradition, coming of age is our equivalent of coming into a faithful adulthood. Like catechism or preparing for a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, youth are asked to engage in questions of their beliefs. But unlike our Christian or Jewish cousins, we hold true to a principle of a free and responsible search for truth. We present different theological and spiritual points of engagement, and then we don't tell youth what to believe. We ask them, what do you believe? It is a stunningly rich and beautiful endeavor. At First Universalist Church of Minneapolis, the church I served before coming here, my office used to be known as the crying room. And it was true. Each April, a parade of ninth graders would sit across from me, one-on-one in my office, and we would talk about their lives and matters of faith. What does it mean to be human? What does God mean? What does no God mean? Is there such a thing as evil? And invariably, in that deep and wide conversation, a youth would tear up or just weep outright. As Mark Neppo writes, we were holding and listening, practicing those quiet braveries of love. Many conversations have stuck with me over the years, but one theme in particular is germane to our sermon series of cherished values. Youth had questions about love, and what do we actually mean by love? And our talks went something like this. Reverend Ruth, I don't know about this love thing. I think it's kind of ridiculous how we always talk about love around here, but what does that really mean? I mean, when I'm watching my friend get bullied in the hallway, am I supposed to love the fight away? Am I supposed to make everyone hold hands and sing, "Go now in peace"? No. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to step in, and I have stepped in, Reverend Ruth. Is that love? The conversations I've had with youth around love calls me out, and I think, in a way, it calls us all out. What does love mean? Our youth are not alone in their critique of this love thing that we love to talk about. Several years ago, I was at a conference in New York City called Revolutionary Love, and nearly every speaker was asking the same thing. What does it really mean when we say love in a religious context, in a real-world context, in a racial justice context, in a school hallway context, in a sitting alone by yourself in a room feeling unlovable context? What does love mean? There were all kinds of speakers at this conference, all kinds of perspectives, from Van Jones to Bill Moyers to a whole lot of people who you're never going to hear about. And here's what it all boiled down to. Love is more than a feeling we hope we fall into one day. Love is more than a private emotion that makes us feel good. Human rights activist and lawyer Valerie Kaur says it this way: love that is revolutionary is more akin to a commitment you make than a feeling you have. Love is more akin to a commitment you make than a feeling you have. Revolutionary love, she says, is like birthing a child. It is fierce. It is messy, it is not perfect, it wobbles, it holds fast, and it is always aligned with bringing something good into being. This faith claim resonates with our Universalist ancestors and a proclamation they made in 1803 as they sought to be recognized as a denomination. God's nature is love, they said. God is love, or put another way, the source of all being is love. This little group of Universalist congregations professed that nothing is outside of God's nature of love, nothing. Everything is restored to love in the end, to holiness and happiness. They said that holiness and true happiness are inseparably connected, that when you are experiencing joy, you are experiencing the rush of the divine. We are called to practice good works because that is where joy and true happiness are often found. Benjamin Rush, a Universalist and a signator of the Declaration of Independence, wrote this: "Universal love leads to truths about all subjects, more especially upon the subject of government. It establishes the equality of mankind, humankind. It abolishes the punishment of death for any crime and converts jails into houses of repentance and reformation." That was written in 1790. Universalism was a declaration of a revolutionary love, and one that runs deep in our tradition. Love demands more than belief, they said. Love demands action, a commitment to a way of being and living. It was as radical in the late 1700s as it is today. Google Universalism, and you'll find about as many sites declaring Universalism heretical as you will pages that try to explain what Universalism actually is. Rooted in her Sikh faith, Valerie Kaur talks about love as a compass we follow. A compass we follow in three directions. We labor and love. We labor in love for others, we labor in love for our opponents, and we labor in love for ourselves. Revolutionary love is a commitment we make to a way of being and living. When we point our compass of love towards others, we hold and listen, understanding there is no such thing as stranger. We are part of one another, she says. You are a part of me I do not yet know. I love that sentence. I will let your story and your grief into my heart. And with this, we learn about one another, how to care for one another, how to fight for one another. As warriors of love, we show up for one another because we love one another. There's no such thing as stranger. When we point our compass of love towards our opponents, we begin by tending the wound, she says. Surprisingly, to love one's opponents begins with investigating our own rage. Now, many of us are uncomfortable with that term rage, or owning that we have any rage, and yet in this time of consuming resentments and rage, Kaur implores us to begin with investigating our rage because it is loaded with information and energy. It tells us all kinds of things about our hurts and our wounds. We have to honor our rage, Kaur says, and express it in containers that do not harm others while allowing us to get the information we need. When we feel strong enough, grounded enough, safe enough, we can turn to our opponents and listen, not as a way to change them or convince them that we are right and they are wrong, but again, to understand them. There are no such things as monsters in this world, she says. There are only wounded human beings who are lost in their greed, their hurts, and their traumas. Tending to the wounds of our opponent gives us information for how to change the contexts, the cultures, the frameworks that allow harmful behaviors to persist. With that information, we can reimagine new ways of being and being together, creating a more just and peaceful world. Tend the wounds. Now, not all of us will be able to turn our love compass to our opponents. For those of us who feel as if the world has its knee on our neck, your work is to survive. Your work is to survive and to heal. The labor of love is a communal endeavor, and so some of us will step in when others cannot. Finally, we love ourselves. We breathe and push. Valerie calls revolutionary love for self akin to being a midwife of a birthing mother. We cannot ask ourselves to push and push and push without breath, without rest and encouragement between contractions. We cannot work and not pay heavy consequences. Love for self means finding a rhythm between breathing, resting, taking nourishment, and the push for our work in the world. We step in and we step back, paying attention to our bodies and our spiritual and emotional health. Sometimes the pain of working the world is so great it feels impossible. And this happens all the time in the birthing room. Mothers cry out, "I can't do this. I can't make this happen. I can't go on. The pain is too great. I need to stop." And at this point, Core asks us to discern what really is happening. Is this a time to step back, or is it a time of transition? A time when the labor of love is calling you to bear down, hang in, leaning into the arms of your community, your ancestors, your faith, in order for this communal work of love and justice to emerge. Breathe and push. This is what it is to live love, not just talk about love. And these three directional points of revolutionary love are beautifully illustrated in a story that is told by Genesis B. Genesis is a Black artist and rapper, an activist and author who hails from Biloxi, Mississippi. She released her first single at age 17, and she is just a big-hearted genius. In April 2016, Genesis was performing in New York City, and she heard about a move in her home state of Mississippi to declare April Confederate Heritage Month. Genesis was livid. She was love mad. She wasn't sure what she was going to do, but she knew she was going to do something. And during the performance, Genesis slit a hole in the Confederate flag, and she stuck it over her head and yelled, I quote, "Mississippi had the audacity to name April Confederate Heritage Month. I'm going to show you how I celebrate that expletive." Then she picked up a noose from the stage floor and put it around her neck, and then she pulled up the end, walking around the stage like one more piece of strange fruit. Someone took a picture of her draped in the Confederate flag with the noose around her neck, and the picture went viral. She received all kinds of death threats. and all kinds of hate mail. And it was really scary at first, she said, but then she decided she needed to keep breathing and keep pushing. So then she got a post from a white grade school friend who supported the Mississippi flag and the Confederate Heritage Month and called her out. Genesis decided she had to go home. She had to go back to Mississippi. She said, engaging online and trying to express, that's cool, but there's nothing like looking somebody in the eye and seeing the subtle nuances for them to relate to you and you to relate to them. Me being angry and yelling at them, or them yelling at me, is not going to solve anything. We've lost the human connection. Friends, do you hear what's going on here? This is practicing revolutionary love. Love as commitment. Love as commitment to others, to move even when it's scary and taking your place in the fight. Love as commitment to loving your opponents, paying attention to your own rage and listening to the stories that give rise to your opponent's opinions and rage. To find human connection. Love as commitment to oneself, of breathing and pushing. Genesis B went home to come face to face with herself, her community, and her opponents. She decided to bring a camera crew with her to document the journey. The centerpiece of the film is the conversation she has with her white childhood friend who supports the Confederate flag as a state emblem. In the film, you listen to each person speak their truth. Both of them claim ancestry and honoring the past as part of their reasoning and their resolve. You can see both of them breathing really deep, trying to calm themselves down while the other one lays out their arguments. You can see each one of them practicing restraint and committing themselves second by second to love. The friend calls the flag a symbol of home. And then he turns to Genesis and says, "What about you?" And Genesis replies, "It makes me feel unwelcome in my home, with my grandfather and my ancestors being harassed by the KKK and white supremacists flying and waving that flag as they hurt my family." The conversation is profound and so moving. Through active breathing and pushing, the braveries of holding and listening, you see this bridge being built between them. And finally, the friend says, "I can see where you're coming from. I see that you would have to unwind a whole lot of trauma and hate to see the flag as I do. As much as I'd like to see that symbol remain, who should say that my wants should outweigh your pain? Will I lose my heritage if that flag changes? No, I won't." And Genesis says, "I think it would open up a lot of hearts if we let that symbol go." The final cut is watching these two friends sit in this really narrow stairway saying, "We need more conversations like this." Now you might be saying to yourself, "This story is all well and good, but I'm not famous. I don't have a camera crew. I don't have that kind of clout. I don't have that kind of willpower or courage." But I say, switch up your grip. Just because you can't change the entire system doesn't mean you shouldn't try anything at all. No matter how small you may consider your practice of revolutionary love, practice it anyway. Understand love is a commitment you make to yourself, to others, and your opponents. Lean into your universalism, my friends. If you say you believe in the principle of inherent worth and dignity of every person, then remember that you are a person too. Someone of worth and dignity. Find ways of quieting that persistent, vicious inner voice that insists that you are an imposter, or that you'll never amount to anything, or that you're too little, too big, too loud, too quiet, too afraid, whatever you tell yourself. Begin by living universalism within yourself. Include yourself as worthy and deserving of love. Extend your universalism to others and to your opponents. If you say you believe in justice and equity and compassion in human relationships, then commit yourself to mixing it up, to holding and listening and reimagining. You may not be doing it perfectly, but you'll be doing it rightly by doing what you can. I am convinced that love is the thing. Love is the thing. We just have to know what we mean and commit our lives to it. May it be so. Amen.